Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Shine.
We're kicking off this edition of Saving America with my Week in Review commentary. As the Iranians continue to be slow learners and California might actually elect a Republican governor, what else is going on? Another assassination attempt on President Trump. Department of Justice drops criminal investigation of Fed Chair Powell. The SPLC investigation takes off, and it's about time. Bad news on the job front. Let's take a closer look at these and other hot stories for Week 18 of 2026. Another assassination attempt on President Trump. When I heard the initial reports, I thought it was a retrospective. Then I realized it's happened again. Fortunately, nobody was killed, and the one guard who was shot was wearing his bulletproof vest. Thank goodness. Trump seemed to take it all in stride, participating in a press interview shortly after the incident, including where he took questions. This guy is pretty amazing, folks. Whether you like him or hate him, he is something else. The White House Correspondents' Dinner is traditionally a fun affair, not so much this time. The good news is that it will reportedly be rescheduled. Let's turn to the shooter. As my regular audience knows, I do not use the names of the whack fools who do this type of stuff. I do believe some do these horrible things in a desperate attempt to get in the news. This is a young man with a bachelor's and a master's degree in engineering subjects. He even attended a Lutheran high school. But note that he earned both degrees in California. I mention this due to the heavy leftist bent in higher education there. It reminds me of the background of the jerk who is accused of killing the United Healthcare executive in New York City. He also had 2 engineering degrees and went to the ultra-liberal UPenn. Does the inculcation in higher ed have an impact on some of these people engaging in this horrible antisocial behavior? If so, how are we going to correct that situation? For now, I'm glad that Trump and his cabinet members attending the event are okay. Perhaps the shooter will have an awakening after 20 to 30 years behind bars. It underscores the importance of toning down the out-of-control political rhetoric. I also note that I agree with Trump that if the new White House ballroom was completed, this event could be held in a beautiful and far more secure setting. In this case, the shooter apparently took trains from California to Washington and was a guest at the big Hilton hotel that was hosting the dinner event. This enabled him to get a shotgun and a pistol into the building. He then, incredibly, tried to run through security into the hotel ballroom where he was stopped, tackled, and arrested, of course. Department of Justice drops criminal investigation of Fed Chair Powell. As much as I dislike Chairman Powell, I doubt he personally pocketed millions of dollars in the horrendously over-budget renovations of the Fed offices in Washington, D.C. So no big surprise when the Department of Justice dropped its criminal investigation of him. The probe will now be run on the civil side by the Inspector General. It would have been nice if this incredible waste of taxpayer money had been subject to review before something approaching $1 billion was flushed down the toilet. The positive to this action is that the confirmation of the well-qualified Kevin Warsh to be the new Fed chair was being held up by certain members of the Senate until this criminal investigation was dropped. Therefore, now that it's been dropped, there should be no barrier to Warsh being appointed prior to May 15th. This action will hopefully end the pathetic leadership of the Fed by Powell. As a footnote, if criminal acts are detected later, those can still be brought at that time. Speaking of Kevin Warsh, Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas herself, reached new lows in her questioning of him during his Senate screening. This is really saying something, as she's been an embarrassment to her home state and all of the United States for several decades now. This clown rudely accused Warsh of being a sock puppet for President Trump. This was despite the testimony by him that he had made zero promises to Trump. Warsh is known to be super smart and a legitimate financial whiz, unlike Warren. Hey, Warsh made $10 million in income, not investments. His salary was $10 million. This is somebody who should be running the Fed. Apparently knows how to make money, which might be a nice idea for a federal bureaucrat. I call on my friends and relatives in Massachusetts to dump Warren in favor of someone with an IQ over 80 and who has the demeanor fitting of an American elected official. SPLC investigation takes off, and it's about time. The Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, is a poster child for having limited time organizations that shut down when their job is done. The high point for the organization was 20, 30 years ago when they went after the KKK to the extent that it bankrupted that organization. For at least the last 15 years, they have taken to listing conservative organizations, conservative news outlets, Christian organizations, some pro-parent organizations as so-called hate organizations. This has then been used to block the falsely labeled organizations from access to corporate donations and in some cases block them from social media sites. In other words, they are now accused of causing the type of mayhem they were supposed to fight. About 10 years ago, I had the misfortune to attend a speech by the person then heading the SPLC. He was obviously divorced from modern-day America. He sounded more like a shill for communist Cuba than a representative of an American nonprofit public interest operation. I told the leader of the organization that booked him to make sure that he did not make that same mistake again. More recently, I've had the pleasure of discussing the failures of the SPLC on Saving America with Tyler O'Neill, who wrote the definitive book about this failed organization. The latest is that the SPLC has been indicted by a grand jury in Alabama on 11 felony counts by the U.S. Department of Justice. Between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC is accused of using their funds donated to the organization to send money, yes, send money to groups they have attacked in the past. The SPLC is accused of secretly funneling over $3 million in donated funds to individuals affiliated with violent extremist groups, including the Klan, Aryan Nations, American Nazi Party, and the white supremacists who led the riot in Charlottesville in 2017. My best guess is that due to their prior success, they were running out of boogeymen and decided to kick up the action so they could look like they were doing something. The indictment includes 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. These are really terrible acts if proven. Obviously, the corporations who helped fund the SPLC thought they were funding a legit organization. The members of the public who believe the labels placed on the many innocent organizations by the SPLC have been sold a bill of goods. Of course, the SPLC has denied the allegations. It specifically claimed it put informants in some of the target organizations to gain information, not to fund the bad guys. The left claims the charges could be politically motivated, while conservatives simply say, it's about time. We shall see, of course. In the meantime, let's grab some popcorn and watch the action unfold. Bad news on the job front. I was hopeful with the strong March jobs report that good news was about to follow. Well, that may be coming, but first some headwinds. Over the last week, there have been some major layoffs announced. The lead story has been Meta, also known as Facebook, which is cutting about 10% of its workforce, or about 8,000 jobs. This is blamed on a conversion to more active use of AI. In turn, Microsoft is offering buyouts to about 8,750 employees in an effort to trim payroll in the face of more extensive use of AI, of course. Not sure this can be tied to AI, but Nike is cutting 1,400 staff jobs. My understanding is that while the sportswear company has been struggling for a while, in fact, a key Nike executive, Heidi O'Neill, was announced as the new CEO of Lululemon, effective this September. So far, investors are not responding well to the news due to perceived lack of progress at Nike before going over to Lululemon. Capping the latest round of layoffs is KPMG, the mega auditing and consulting firm, which is cutting 10% of its U.S. audit partners. While long-term this could help lead America to new frontiers, this could be a tough sell for the GOP as the November elections rapidly approach. Dershowitz becomes a Republican. Famous lawyer and law professor Alan Dershowitz just announced that he will formally join the GOP. He represented President Trump at his impeachment some years back, despite having voted for Hillary Clinton. Dershowitz, age 87, was a member of the Dem Party for 60 years. He became an independent a couple years ago, but felt to have more impact, he needed to declare his GOP affiliation, which he just did. He explained that the Dem Party is simply not with him, especially due to its far-left positions and its anti-Semitism. I am surprised that more lifelong Dems have not done the same thing, especially the large number of Jewish voters who affiliate with the party. Virginia redistricting and a judge's order. After running supposedly as a moderate, the new Virginia governor is now being referred to as Scamburger, as she headed the state in a far-left direction with high taxes and radical policies. The latest is an attempt to disenfranchise the large GOP population in the state by an extreme gerrymandering attempt. The gullible voters in Virginia have now voted by only a 3% margin to follow her on this. The balance should be 6-5 in favor of the Dems, but with this attempt, if it goes through, it would be 10-1 in favor of the Dems. That's the number of congressional seats, of course. The good news is that this is at odds with Virginia's own laws, and a Virginia Circuit Court judge has blocked implementation of the plan for now, deeming it unconstitutional. This has caused Florida to examine its redistricting to keep the balance of power in Congress, in case this wacky plan gets to move forward in Virginia. I again emphasize my position that all of this should be replaced with a mechanical system where you start in one corner of the state, you count the number of bodies in a congressional district, stop. You start counting again, stop. You start counting again, stop. There's no need to have all of this ridiculous gerrymandering. Folks, by the way, that term gerrymandering goes back to 1839. It's time to retire it. And this is just another example of why we've got to get rid of this craziness. End this nonsense now. California has a voter ID proposal for November. Hey, folks, I just love this one. On the ballot this November in California is a referendum that would require voters in this historically deep blue state to provide ID to vote in person or by mail. Given the strong resistance by the fraud party in Congress, I find this proposal in California fascinating. Again, this is a state where a Republican is leading in the governor's race as their open primary. So stay tuned. Might be some big changes in California. Now the left says stealing is okay. Some of the strange darlings of the liberal media lately are some folks that I do not recognize. They are way left with overt commie viewpoints. Not sure how this helps the Dem Party that is already being labeled as too far left. As I just mentioned, Alan Dershowitz has dumped the party after 60 years. In any event, these oddballs are making a case that stealing from large companies is okay. Now, this is the same rationale that the crazies supporting the murder of the United Healthcare executive are using. The heck with the 10 Commandments or laws. We can make up our own rules if we're lefties when we feel like it. That is chaos and is the reason a civilized society has laws in the first place. Let's dissect this rationale. So this is a big company, so I can steal from them since I have less than them. Now, who owns that big company? You do, you morons. Most of these big companies are publicly traded. Millions upon millions of hardworking Americans have 401k savings plans at work. Those plans are invested largely in the stock market. So who really is losing here? You think those executives get a lighter paycheck because you stole something? Not hardly. Hey, it gets better. Uncontrolled shoplifting in California has caused many major companies to abandon San Francisco, for instance. The Nordstrom's famous flagship store in downtown has closed. What do you think? Maybe 200 to 300 jobs went with that large store. No jobs equals no money for normal people who pay their rent and buy, do not steal their groceries. Relating to a parallel argument, the fellow is accused of setting fire to a paper goods warehouse in California, claimed he did it because he was not being paid enough. Well, now he has no income. Of course, he'll be sitting in a jail cell for a very long time. Did he think about the fact that the job he was doing only merited that pay based on the economic value to society? Would he rather be replaced by a robot or have the job shipped overseas? Maybe a smarter approach would be to go to school and improve his skills to qualify for a higher paid job. I find it telling that California implemented a mandatory $20 an hour wage for fast food workers. Subsequently, thousands of fast food locations have closed across the state. The amount simply exceeds the economic value of the hourly jobs in question. If a business cannot make money and it cannot continue to employ workers, what difference does it make if a certain salary is being set by the state? Won't work, folks. And in our special interest report this week, yes, I've got one real interesting one for you, folks. Dog research may help in Alzheimer's research for humans. Now, stay with me on this one. The report is from the University of Arizona College of Veterinary Medicine. The researchers have discovered that while big dogs do not live as long as smaller dogs, their cognitive abilities stay with them to the end. Their mental degradation is not as acute when paired with their age. So researchers have discovered that the bigger dogs have more of the IGF-1 growth hormone. If this hormone has that effect, could that be duplicated in humans? Well, maybe. The researchers are launching a study of IGF-1 neurocognitive aging and longevity with an acronym SIGNAL. As I've commented before, with the world's aging population, not just in the U.S., such research is critical, and I'm going to continue to monitor this. Hey, if you've enjoyed our content here on Saving America, be sure to check out our new site on Patreon, and that is going to be Dr. Dave Saves America on Patreon. Be sure to check it out for additional content. And that's my week in review report for week 18 of 2026.